Two, one. Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys Podcast. My name is Scott Howell, your fearless host and leader, insurance agency owner and insurance evangelist for I Protect Insurance and Financial Services, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Mobile, Alabama. Parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome the incomparable Mr. Bradley Flowers. How are you, Bradley?
You got a bit of a head cold, Scott. Sounds like you got something. You got to play through the pain today, though.
Woke up this morning, Bradley, did not have a voice at all. I cannot tell you that what I have done today. I've moved mountains to be able. I haven't talked to anybody today, including my son, for more than about 5 minutes because I want this podcast is that important and that big of a deal to me. And so my sister, I'm sitting in her law office right now in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, recording this podcast. She sends me a message an hour and a half ago that said, "Hey, by the way, don't know if this will work or not. I know you're not supposed to talk right now, and you're taking all this stuff to help you be able to talk tonight. Starbucks coffee has something called a medicine ball. Go in, ask for the medicine ball. Apparently, it's supposed to be this miracle that it will allow you to be able to speak. Bradley, I'll be damned if it didn't work."
There you go.
Walked into Starbucks, and here we are.
Thank Howard
Guys,
Schultz.
Do what?
And thank Howard Schultz.
That's exactly right. Hey, Bradley, tell our audience what's going on at your office at Portal right now.
A lot.
No. I'm talking about what you said just a little while ago about what they're recording upstairs at your office.
Oh, they're filming a movie here tomorrow, a Hallmark movie in my parking lot and on my rooftop. So I hate we're not podcasting here tomorrow because that would be entertaining. I hear the theme is a small hometown girl whose dad is also the local Santa falls in love with an insurance agent. I made that up, but I hope that's what it is.
Well, guys, we have a very special guest, and I know that all of our audience, the 250,000 insurance agents from around the world that listen to our podcast, on more than a couple of occasions, especially during hurricane season, have heard Bradley and I mention his name. We have talked about him and what a great meteorologist he is for literally years, Bradley. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give him the introduction that he's always deserved. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 28 years, he has served as the chief meteorologist for ABC 3340. In all, his career as a television weather anchor spans more than 46 years. In addition to being an author, podcaster, and the weather god to the people of the great state of Alabama, he has also received the 2 highest awards in the nation for a broadcast meteorologist: the National Weather Association's Broadcaster of the Year and the American Meteorological Society's Award for Broadcast Meteorology. His tireless effort in advancing the public's awareness of and engagement in the science of meteorology and weather forecasting has earned him the title of the most trusted man in the state of Alabama. He has earned multiple Emmy Awards and was elected to the National Academy Television Arts and Sciences Silver Circle for his outstanding achievements in the broadcast industry and his track record of both mentoring and community involvement. He was one of the first weather anchors in the United States to earn certified broadcast meteorologist from the American Meteorological Society, and he is married to the beautiful Karen, and they have 2 grown sons. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor today to introduce to you first time guest on the IGP, Chief Meteorologist, Mr. James Spann. How are you, James?
Wow, I'm speechless. That was the greatest intro ever. You nailed it. I mean, you abs. No, this is not going to be the best one. That was the best one ever. So you did it,
James. I am so humbled to have you here tonight, and we got so much that we want to talk about, and we have not as long as I would like to talk to you, but we this podcast, as you know, is an insurance podcast, and there is an intersection. Okay, there's an intersection, a hand in glove here that we as insurance agents and the industry and the carriers that have actuaries that look at weather and other thousands of different things to determine insurance rates. We wanted you to have you because we believe you're the best in the business on here tonight to talk about a lot of things. And I guess my first thing I wanted to say to you was I can remember, I believe it was you that years ago, maybe back in the 07, 08 time frame, I just happened to be on the radio and I thought I heard you talking to, maybe it was Rick and Bubba or some radio show, and you talked about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, a lot of people use the word climate change. I wanted to get your opinion tonight. Here we are, fast forward 2024. What is your opinion on climate change as it relates to the, multiple weather events that have been taking place over the last few years that, quite frankly, are driving insurance rates, or at least that's part of it?
Well, goodness, I was just hoping to get 15% off on my car insurance here. I mean, I don't know who's going to be answering hard questions here. I mean, come on.
He starts with a banger.
So, yeah, obviously, you guys know this. The subject has been politicized.
Yeah.
So no matter what you say, you're going to make half the country mad at you. And nobody's going to listen. Nobody will listen to any discussion on this topic because we live in a nation that's very angry, that's very divided, a nation that wants to fight. And it's rough out there. I live in it every day. I mean, the last 2 weeks, I would suggest, perhaps have brought the most intense hate of my whole career, which is just a sign of how far we have gotten off track here with this political polarization. So whenever you bring up that subject, immediately people's backs are arched, their fists are clenched, and they're ready to punch and fight. And nobody wants to listen to anything involving climate with a critical thinking mode. When I was in school, they taught that. They taught that in high school, critical thinking. And now we've become a nation of lemmings where it's almost like a religion. You are worshiping a political ideology, and your gods are the politicians. And let me just say as a disclaimer, I can't stand politics, cannot stand it, because I've seen what it's done to the country. And I vote, absolutely. Goodness, a lot of people have died for my right to vote. I will vote. But that's it. I don't think about it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I don't. And so that, having said it, is a disclaimer. You within the community, the scientific community, you kind of got two schools of thought on climate. You've got the hardcore doom set where they believe that the end of the planet is coming soon. This is an ELE, an extinction level event. And unless we go, with no carbon emissions immediately, it's all over.
Right.
Then you've got the other set that believe, sure, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. CO2 is a greenhouse gas. It has to affect the climate to some degree. The question is to what degree, and how do you fix it? And so my position, the concern I have is that we now don't really know the difference between weather and climate. And I'll just leave it at that. And again, I've been attacked by right wingers and left wingers. I am equally hated by both sides.
You're in a good spot.
So maybe I'm doing it right. I don't know.
That's
right. The right wingers attacked me for being a liar, covering up the government control of the weather. A lot of right wingers firmly believe that the government created the hurricane, steered both hurricanes, Milton and Helene.
I saw that.
And then the left wingers believe that we've never had a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico in the middle of hurricane season until the concept of climate change came along. And they honestly believe this stuff. You guys think it's crazy? They believe this in their heart. And so they immediately, the right wingers, all of a sudden I'm a liar, libtard, all this stuff, government shill. I'm cashing huge government checks, covering up chemtrails and HARP. And you've seen this stuff. And then on the left, you become a denier and some type of phobe. And so you just can't talk about it. But I will say, I think if you want to tie climate to anything involving the tropics, these hurricanes, the one thing you might be able to do is to tie the rapid intensification in which you see an immediate ramp up of wind velocity and a ramp down of pressure. I think there's a pretty clear climate connection to that. But having a major hurricane forming in the Gulf in the middle of hurricane season, and to say that's the result of climate change, I just can't go there. I've been doing this almost 50 years, and I can't tell you how many hurricanes I've worked in the middle of hurricane season that have formed in the Gulf of Mexico that produce catastrophic damage. And so, and again, forget, my opinion doesn't matter. All that matters, it's numbers and data. That's all that matters.
Sure.
And so I would advise to go look at a chart of hurricane frequency and intensity going back to when weather records started, good, reliable weather records, and look at it yourself. And I like people to listen to both sides. I recommend Dr. Marshall Shepard, University of Georgia. He's one that kind of thinks it's a serious situation. He's a climate emergency. And I love Marshall. He's a good friend of mine. On the other hand, Roger Pielke Jr., this guy's brilliant. He's like me. He thinks like me. And he throws the data out there. And again, my job is forecasting weather. I'm not a climatologist. That's not what I do.
Sure.
But just try and listen to both sides and use your critical thinking skills and just try and get the politics out of it. I would never, ever get climate information from a left wing or a right wing politician. That's inherently dangerous. And I'll leave it at that. I've said way too. I will get a lot of hate mail after this little monologue here. So we'll just leave it at that.
It's interesting that, Scott and I know insurance agents all over the country, and insurance agents will reach out to us when there's a storm in the Gulf, that sort of thing, and offer to help client, claims, that sort of thing. And, I had somebody say to me a couple of weeks ago, like, man, you guys get hit with hurricanes all the time in Mobile. And I'm like, well, actually, we had 2 in 16 years that were direct hits, Ivan and Sally. So if you look at it that way, yeah, there's some that like the one that hit Louisiana a few months ago that brushes us. We get, some thunderstorms from it. But as far as direct hits go, you know what I mean? It's not that much. But on the subject of hate, one thing that you are like my beacon in the sky during hurricane season. Okay. So my agency, yes, we insure homes from North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia. We are on the coast. If there is a hurricane, a potential for a hurricane, I am on notice. And if you go to my Twitter account during hurricane season and you hit search, the first account that comes up is James Spann. And it's because all of these people listen to what I think you call dirtbag weathermen, right? And somebody in my office just turned the lights out on me because they didn't know I was here. The dirtbag weathermen, and my mother-in-law 2 weeks ago thought that Milton was hitting Mobile. And I'm like, it isn't. It's going to hit Tampa, Florida, right? Because all of these people sensationalize on social media. How have the amateur meteorologists changed your job?
Well, it's not good. I mean, it is not good at all. And people don't even know how to find the truth anymore. I'll give you a good example. So after Milton came in to the Florida West Coast, right below Tampa, immediately the thousands, if not millions, of posts were shared that said, Hurricane Nadine to take the same path as Milton, and it will destroy the Florida coast, what's left of it. get out now. And people believe this. They honestly believe that. And it came from, Uncle Tom's, Uncle Joe's forecast page and TikTok dance site or whatever. And they don't know where to find reliable information. And quite frankly, it's almost like I'm not going to blame it on journalists, but now to get the news, everybody's either right wing or left wing. They distort everything to support a candidate. And I'm afraid weather is getting sucked into this stuff. And what we try and teach people to do is to find a calm, credible source of information. That would be a professional. Start with the National Hurricane Center. Here's an idea. It's easy to find. And then beyond that, find a local meteorologist that understands the culture, the people, the geography, the microclimates, the social science impact of messaging, and follow them. And between that and the Hurricane Center, you'll know, and everything that you need to know. And yet people will go find hurricane information from TikTok dancers that are semi-nude. And I've seen all this stuff. People send it to me. There was a guy, I'm a sailor, and I know about weather more than any of these government-controlled meteorologists. Milton's going to come out the other side of Florida, and it's going to destroy Charleston. It's going to destroy Savannah. And it was shared millions of times. And you had people in Savannah, in Charleston, some people were literally canceling elective surgery. People were canceling vacation trips because they saw a TikTok video. And this is where we are in society today. And really, it's more of a social science problem than a physical science problem. That's all I do is physical science. I have not been trained in how to deal with a world like this. And we need to. And we work with social scientists, and they help us a lot. But the screaming message is to try and find the credible sources of information that you need. And again, for hurricanes, the National Hurricane Center, start with them, and then find a credible meteorologist, preferably one that's got the AMS certification, that can guide you through a storm in a calm, logical way with good information and good messaging.
That's great advice.
James, I'll tell you the one that blows me away. You want to talk about extremes relative to messages I've seen you get, but when we're going to have a severe weather day, and you've come out and you've said, listen, you need to be weather aware tomorrow, okay? And I mean, you're serious, and then you get some person that sends you a Facebook message or a tweet about how they're mad because you came on the air during Jeopardy.
Well, that's just part of the game. That's part of the game. And that problem is kind of going away as people's habits of consuming media change. People go home and they watch Netflix, they watch Hulu. They don't watch, linear television like they used to. So that problem is kind of fading away. But again, every once in a while, the weather is serious. It is life-threatening, and you better pay attention. And we're going to use some really strong words. But that doesn't happen that often. And so the problem is every time it rains, you'll have broadcast stations that declare code red, weather emergency days. And they'll do it for fog, or they'll do it for a rainy day. Right. And you watch the national news and, mega monster storm, millions in the path, gazillions in the path, unprecedented, struck without warning. They say the same thing every time. So what happens when you really do have a monster storm? Nobody will listen.
It's the boy who cries wolf.
It is a hyperbole machine. And, so you've got the old school broadcasters doing that to try and get people to come back to broadcast. And then you've got the social media influencers that make more money as they get more engagement and more likes and more shares. That's how the creator content funds work, and they get piles of money off this stuff. And it's really hard on us. And again, I will say we're pretty tired of this. Again, I'm very strong mentally and I'm very strong physically. I'm not retiring anytime soon. I'm not done with it, but I'm just saying we're tired of the malarkey out there. And what we have to do is work with social scientists and let them tell us how we can help people make better decisions on how they get weather information. Because listen, and my thing is tornadoes. That's really my specialty. And April 27, 2011, that day taught me a lot. I don't know, were you guys alive in 2011?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
remember where I was?
I've got underwear older than both you guys. But
Maybe me, but not Scott for sure.
And I will say I do need some new underwear. But we had 62 tornadoes in one day that killed 252 people in my state. One day from tornadoes. And the warnings were excellent. In some cases, the lead time was 45 minutes. And yet 252 people died. That is absolutely inexcusable for anybody, me, you guys, anybody. And it's just a sign that we all have work to do. What we learned that day is that what I've talked about, our thing is physical science. We don't understand anything about behavioral science. We're asking people to do something, to take action. And we need to learn about that. And the social scientists have really helped us since 2011. And I think we've adjusted the messaging and a lot of the things we do that will make it better next time there's a big tornado day like that. What's the number one reason people died that day? You guys know? April 27, 2011. Number one reason people. Number one.
I'm gonna get. I had clients that actually passed away that day. I'm gonna guess, and this was one of the questions I had for you, but I'm gonna hold it for just a second, and I'm gonna guess flying debris.
No, the siren mentality. The notion that you're going to hear some World War I air raid siren before a tornado. Where did that come from? But it's rampant, especially in the southern U.S. here.
Sure.
And goodness gracious. And it really dawned on us the next year, on the 23rd of January, 2012, we had a 16-year-old girl killed in Clay, Christina Heichelbeck. And happened at 4 a.m. The warning was in effect 37 minutes before the tornado got there. The grieving parents later that day said they didn't hear the siren. Come on! I'm done with it. I wanted to climb these poles, take them down, and burn them. That way you know that you will not hear them. They reach a limited number of people outside. That's it.
Right.
And we've got to move past that. And I didn't know how bad the problem was until the social scientists helped us figure that out. And that's one example of how we're improving our messaging. And if we have to be bold, so what? I'll be bold. I don't care. I don't care if it makes somebody mad. And the number two reason people died was a lack of helmet use. And that's a whole different topic for another day. But not one time did I say that on the air during all those long hours. Not once did I say that. And that killed people. And we've just got to do better.
I think the smartphone notifications have helped with that a lot.
Associated with that. Number one, was that outbreak, that tornado outbreak that occurred on April 27th, 2011 in Alabama, North Alabama, was that the largest tornado outbreak in American history?
Well, the problem is we don't have the data collection techniques in 1974 that we do today. I lived through April 3rd, 1974. That was the last super outbreak. These things happen about once every 40 years. And they were very close. And the question is, what's your metric? How do you count the worst tornado disaster? The number of tornadoes, the number of deaths, the damage caused, the length, the path length of all the tornadoes combined. They were in the same league. And I guess you might argue April 27, 2011 the metrics were a little higher than April 3rd, 1974. But we had a day like that, March 21st, 1932. And understand, in 1974 and 1932, we didn't have Doppler radar. We didn't have dual polarization radar. We didn't have the storm survey techniques we have now. We didn't understand convection that much back in those days. And so the problem is we don't know a lot about 74 and 32. February 18th, 1884, the Enigma outbreak. That could be the granddaddy of them all. We don't know how many people died. We just don't know things. So, but those type days we do know happen about once every 40 years. But forget that. Listen, all it takes is one. If there's one tornado in the whole state, wherever you live, and if that sucker comes down your street, that's your April 27th. So we have to be ready for every severe weather day.
Hey, James, I grew up in Hamilton, Alabama, 13 miles from you, and I can remember my high school football coach talking to us one day in history class about that day and what, he recounted basically that entire day for him. It was a very interesting story, but am I correct in that there was a kid in Ewan, Alabama that I think it was maybe a science project or something, had some kind of tape recorder on a windowsill and had it recording and would am I right about that? And then there was a lot of people that say that that may be the highest wind ever recorded from a tornado or
Ye-
something.
yes, there was a teenager that rolled an audio tape, a cassette recorder,
Yep.
and recorded the audio. In fact, if you go to YouTube and search, James Spann, Ewan, 1974, we've done a story multiple times on that. But yeah, I want to say that they kept that actual recording, the cassette tape, in the bank's vault in downtown Ewan. Of course, we've digitized the whole tape. I mean, we've got
Right.
that for forever now. But yes, and the UN F5 was. I was a senior in high school, and that event changed my life. My hobby when I was in high school was ham radio. Still is
Yep.
my hobby, and they gave me 3 days off to go volunteer and work these tornado disaster areas, and I thought the world was ending. You think the weather is active and violent now? You should have lived in the 1970s. And the first stop was Jasper, Alabama, and they put us in the People's Hospital. Now it's Walker Regional Medical Center, but it was the old
Sure.
People's Hospital. And they had us set up radio gear, and I was busy, and we got everything connected and got the link established back to Birmingham. There were no cell phones in '74. We were it.
Right.
And goodness, when we got finished, I started looking at some of these people in that ER, the graphic nature of the wounds. I had night terrors for a long time. I've never talked about it publicly, privately, and I never will. No child at 17 years old should ever see that. No adult should ever have to see that. And then the next day we went to Ewan, and you think Jasper was bad. I really thought the world was ending because I love storms. I wanted tornadoes. That's how a lot of kids are.
Sure.
That are fascinated by weather. In the Ewan thing, it was just like the end of the world. And we would wind up in Huntsville after that. But again, that little experience changed my life. But yeah, we've just got some work to do, and that's the one thing I'm not. People say, when are you going to retire? Well, never. We got so much work to do, and I think our biggest challenge we have now, it's for those that live in manufactured housing. Okay. And, I've seen some professional meteorologists, they're condescending, basically blaming people that live in mobile homes for their problem. No, listen, there's a lot of low income families in this state, and mobile homes are a godsend, wonderful, affordable housing. And, but it's a death trap during a tornado. And for a lot of people that live in manufactured housing, you can get on TV and be some blow-dried boob on TV all day and say, you must leave mobile homes now. Well, that's easy for you to say. What if they don't have transportation? Or what if they don't have a place to go? And we've got to be better at it. It's up on us. And I think we have to develop an intermediate product between a watch and a warning to help people in manufactured homes and mobile homes.
Great.
We got a lot of work to do.
James, Bradley had a question I wanted him to ask you that I was interested in relative to Hurricane Milton. We had a good friend of ours, David Carruthers, that was in Tampa. Bradley, do you want to ask that question?
Well, yeah, it was interesting because David's in Tampa, and a lot of people, and he's actually in Valrico, and a lot of people, myself included, were messaging me. I reached out, hey, you and the wife and kids come to my house, like you need to get out, whatever. And finally he said, look, I'm not in the evacuation zone. If I leave, if people not in the evacuation zone leave, it's only going to make things worse for the people who actually have to evacuate. And I think that kind of goes back to the making sure you have proper information, right? Making sure, one thing I like that you say, James, is if you're working with old information, you're working with bad information. And getting that proper up-to-date information is so important in these cases. And I think, back to the sirens, I think the smartphones have helped a lot with that, because pretty much anybody who has a smartphone, I believe, gets those warnings. Now, whether they're coming in enough time or not, I don't know.
Yeah, and phones are critical. They're a very important part of the warning process. But in a tornado emergency, they can stop working.
Yeah.
and it becomes a brick. And that's why we strongly advise the baseline for any family to be a weather radio. Hey, it's old school, but it's good school.
Yeah.
That it is loud. The phones go into the do not disturb or sleep mode, and you don't get notifications late at night. So what if a tornado comes through at 3 a.m? That will wake you up. And it's shocking. It is shocking how many people don't have one, especially in tornado-prone areas. And we'll ask them, why don't you have a weather radio? And they'll say either, well, I got me a fancy iPhone, Samsung PQ Pro Max 75S, or I'll hear the siren. Well, no, you won't. You will not hear the siren. And what happens when cell service goes away?
Right.
Which happens often in tornado emergencies. And again, phones are critical. They really are. I mean, they have changed the game in terms of reaching people. There's no doubt about that. But we still believe every business, every home, every business, every home needs a weather radio. That's critical.
So a couple more questions. We'll let you get out of here. So one thing that I find fascinating is, and I don't know the exact statistics, but you know, a roulette wheel at a casino, right? And it has the board that shows all the numbers that have hit previously. Supposedly, casino profits on roulette went up exponentially when they added the board. Because what happened in terms of roulette, what happens in the past has no bearing on what happens in the future. How do you guys use historical weather data to either predict or does that play into any of the stuff you guys do today?
Absolutely. Analogs are critical. Listen, that's the one beautiful thing about being old. It's dirt. I've lived through a lot.
Right.
I started doing this in the late 70s. And so, for example, January of 2014, we had an event here that most people refer to as Snowmageddon. And I have never dealt with a flash freeze in my entire life. And we don't get a lot of snow and ice at this latitude here. Having that experience and learning how the ice accretion process is radically different at 18 degrees compared to 35 degrees. That's an example of an analog. So the next time we have a setup like that, I will know in my brain, this is what we had the last time, and I know what happened. And so analogs are just absolutely critical, not only with winter storms, but with hurricanes, tornadoes, the whole thing. And there's some very good AI computer sites that do a lot of that for you now. And I always advise the younger people to consider looking at the analog sites just to see what's happened in the past under those same circumstances, because that will tell you a very important story.
I believe that affected Mobile too, right? Is that the one that affected the entire state? We had
Snowmageddon did not affect Mobile. This was the two cities that were hit hardest were Birmingham and Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta was hit hard. Birmingham was hit hard. Huntsville had a mini Snowmageddon a couple of years ago, right on Christmas.
Yep.
It was not good. Same thing. It was a flash freeze. But it's that. And let me just say, that's our weakness. You know, that's one thing about it. You know, it's like in football. Every football team's got strengths and weaknesses. And I think for most people down here, and I think most professionals would agree with me, our weakness is snow and ice and winter storms, because we simply don't have that much experience and we don't have that many analogs. We got all the experience in the world with thunderstorms and tornadoes and hurricanes, but that's our that's not our strong suit.
There was an ice storm around that time that hit Mobile, 2013, 2014. And I remember I saw an 18-wheeler on the Dolly Parton Bridge, not going to tell our listeners why it's called that, get to the top of the Dolly Parton Bridge and start sliding backwards. And I was about 100 yards behind it. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going back to the house. I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that stuff's no good. And really, I will tell you guys, we are statistically overdue for an ice storm, a big one in the Deep South. The ice storm of record for my generation was January of 1982. And we fouled it up. And I was very young, but we thought it would start in the evening. It started at about mid-morning, and it started pouring rain, and it was 25 degrees. And the cold air was very shallow, and This was not snow. This was not sleet, but liquid rain falling with temperatures way below freezing. And we had been down to zero a couple of days before that. The infrastructure was cold, and we had about 1.5 million people with no power. Some people had no power for over 1 month. People died because of cold exposure. It was a catastrophic ice storm, and we're just overdue for one of those. And I hope this is not our year, but we'll see. And that's the one thing I don't do seasonal outlooks. Those things, we just don't have a lot of skill, and I'm not in it for clicks and all the clickbait and all this kind of stuff.
We need to relay that to the insurance company, Scott.
Apparently somebody today said this is going to be a La Nina winter and spring, which means we're going to have snow on Christmas like we did the last time, and we're going to have another April 27, 2011. I'm thinking, oh, please. They'll get all the clicks in. Yeah.
Hey, James, I'm gonna go off script here. I've always wanted to ask you this question, so now's my time to shine. How in the world do you do such a fantastic job when you're on air, weather aware day? Maybe there's some weather that you're needing to break in to a broadcast, and the ability that you have to get down to county roads in Marion County, in Walker County, is it just memorization? How did you get that good at that?
Well, I'm old as dirt. So here's the trick. I do school weather programs every single day. I sleep 3 hours a night, which is not healthy. I would not recommend that for anybody. In fact, I'm only 22 years old. This is what you look like when you don't sleep, okay? So I sleep between 1 and 4 a.m. and when possible. And in the morning, I work a shift at my house. I've got a studio and a green wall and all that. And then I leave and go into a school every day. Like today, I was in Bibb County at Cahaba Christian Academy, whole school in the gym. Tomorrow, going to Seal, Alabama. I bet you guys have never been to Seal, Alabama. It's in Russell County near Phoenix City. Friday, I'll be at Margaret, Alabama. I go to Andalusia, Waterloo, Enterprise, East Aboga, you name it, I've been there. And if you do this for 46 years, all of these places, they're in your head. You don't need a map. You just know. And one thing we've learned through social science studies, people can't find their house on a map because phones now give turn-by-turn directions. And again, the easiest thing to do is to be condescending and say, I can't believe these people don't know how to find their house on a map. Well, it's just the way it is. It's not their fault. People have this now. And so we have to call out landmarks. Like if I say a tornado is 14 miles southwest of Billingsley, who knows where that is, even if you live there. But if you say it's near Jim's Pit Barbecue, everybody in Maplesville, Billingsley, Prattville, Clanton, they know where that is on US 82, and they can relate to that. It's a tornado coming up on.
It is uncanny, James. It is. I mean, to watch you do that when you're like, it's between Mark's Mini Mart and Jim's Pit Barbecue on Highway 17 in Maples. I'm like,
I have to say it, Scott. If you are near Wesley's Booby Trap, get out.
Yeah,
yeah. That was the one that got me in trouble. Listen, I don't even think anything of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody that lives in Dora, Summerton, Corner, Bagley, Sayre, they know where Wesley's is. And exactly. I did it without even thinking twice about it. The Green Top Barbecue that used to be on the hill, they had a big fire and they're not there anymore. And so Wesley's as it is. So, the thing's near Wesley's Booby Trap. And of course, everybody went, ooh.
That's a
I
common.
Can't believe he said that.
Wesley's is a common mention on the show. They're probably the only place that's been mentioned less than you have.
Oh, yeah.
The most disturbing thing is that they sent me a shirt, a Wesley's Booby Trap shirt. And I did not take that home to my wife. I gave it to another employee here in our building.
A single guy in the office got the shirt.
Yeah.
Hey, James, I know you need to run, and I don't want to hold you up, but I do have one other question that is insurance related. I know a lot of carriers today are utilizing these hail damage reports from certain vendors like Hail Strike and some others to determine the severity of weather roof claims and, looking at the diameter of the hail in a particular neighborhood. And I only bring that up two reasons. Number one, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, on whether that should be a measurement of actual damage. Because some people say that, well, hail may hit a house a street over harder than it does the house over here on my street. But it's advancements like that I wanted to ask you. How can the insurance industry do a better job of partnering with the meteorological world to improve their way of doing business, or can they?
Well, let me say this. I would think the insurance folks should probably be involved in our integrated warning team meetings. On a regular basis, we have get-togethers. You cannot beat an in-person get-together with the National Weather Service, with private sector meteorologists, which is what I do. I don't work for NOAA.
Boots on the ground. Boots on the ground. Yep.
Emergency managers that work in these counties. And we get together, and it's very productive. School officials come to these because they're having to make big decisions on when to open and when to close. And social scientists come. And I think insurance executives would be a good addition to that group. But the key, it's just understanding the products. Let's say you've had a big event where you got all these claims. Where do you get the data? The Weather Service, they've got a pretty darn good database, but you got to know how to access that database. And oddly enough, you know where their climatological database site is. It's in Asheville, North Carolina, where they had so many problems from Helene. They're slowly getting back online. But I think, number one, forget that. Number one, the best thing to do is to know your local National Weather Service office in all of the areas under your watch. If you're in the insurance business, know all these offices and know they're called county warning areas. Each Weather Service office has a specific CWA, and they've got counties assigned to them. And maybe just call the meteorologist in charge or the WCM, the warning coordination meteorologist, and say, hey, I'm with the insurance industry, and before we have something, I'd like to know, how do I get information on hail and wind damage? The storm surveys are excellent these days. They are so good and so detailed. And it's better to do that before an event than after an event. So you know already how to pull the data from the Weather Service. And that's your official database. The private sector companies, I'm sure they do a fine job. I just don't know enough about what they do to comment on it. But just be sure you know your local Weather Service folks and your local emergency management agency folks, the EMA folks. But between those two groups, you can get some pretty good data.
Hey, Bradley, I don't know if we'll be teaching James something here tonight or not, but in terms of parametric insurance, which is now becoming more and more available, I know for the parametric insurance policies that we sell in our agency, that policy, SOLA Insurance, I believe, uses the National Weather Service's reports, their damage report, their survey. That is the report that they're using to determine both payout and how much to pay out, depending on the size of the tornado. And then now we're coming down the pike here in the next 3 to 6 months with both wind and hail parametric insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Something completely different outside of the realm. And I think that will probably utilize more of the National Weather Service data.
Yeah, that's what they do
Brad?
with parametric is it doesn't matter if your property has damage. If there is an event within a certain radius, the policy pays out, almost kind of like an AFLAC policy. So they're probably tying into a lot of those services that James is talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to get to know the folks now. And let me just say one thing, and I do have to hop off in a second, that a tornado hit our house. This was an EF3 on March 25th, 2021. And I always say this, tornadoes happen to real people at a real place at a real time. It's not always somebody else. I hear this all the time. Well, tornadoes always split and go around my neighborhood. No, they don't. Or I live in a valley and there's a mountain over here and that mountain's going to protect me from every tornado. No, that's not true. But having said that, we got hit in EF3. The threes are pretty tough. I mean, they're all tough. But I will say, and I'm not just blowing sunshine up your skirt here because I'm on the show, that the I've never filed an insurance claim before on anything like this, and the process was really smooth. The adjusters were there quickly, and we got the checks quickly, and it really worked well. So you guys, take all the heat like we do. You get all the haters and stuff, but I'm just saying it was a very, as bad as it was, and it was horrible. The damage was horrible. I mean, but by the grace of God, the roof stayed on the house, so we could, live there while the repairs were being done. A lot of people didn't have that option. They were in a hotel for 9 months, but it just worked out very well. So an attaboy to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And hey, guys, I hate to hop off here, but I've got to go back into Studio A and do my thing over here.
You're good. Scott will close
us out.
Such
a pleasure to have you on. You're welcome anytime. We love you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Y'all have a blessed day now. Bye-bye.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
You want to close us out? That was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Guys, I don't know about, these agents out here listening to this right now. That guy in the state of Alabama, that guy's a big deal. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. I have no idea how he never got snagged by the Weather Channel.
It's probably in the state of Alabama. It is probably Nick Saban, Kay Ivey, who is the governor, and then James Spann. That's probably the three people. Like, if you asked every resident in the state of Alabama, not so much down here because James actually isn't on the news in South Alabama, but if you ask everybody in South Alabama, name the most famous person in Alabama, they're going to say one of those three people. And the thing about James is, like, Scott and I try really hard for this to not be an Alabama podcast. I don't want it to be, but it's with his weather stuff, man. I didn't want to, brown nose him too much, but like he literally is like my North Star, Scott. Like, I'm constantly, what is he saying? What is he saying? What is he saying? And what's this thing look like? And it's the real deal Holyfield info. And if he doesn't know, he's going to say he doesn't know. There's zero speculation, which is so important in this insurance game of knowing, where your customers. I mean, last week, dude, I looked up, okay, how many customers we got in Tampa? Let's know who's going to be affected. So
sure.
And you want to give a shout out to your sister's law office for letting you record there?
Absolutely. Yeah. My sister got all the brains and looks in the family. I had some conflicts today. My son was coming over here to talk to coaches about a baseball scholarship, which I think we have unofficially committed tonight, this afternoon. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and I'm sure there'll be some social media posts about that. But it's been a crazy day.
Did he tell you I called him?
I've done as much as I could to get through this podcast without having much of a voice tonight, but I definitely was excited about having James on. I think he is he's just somebody I think Bradley and I have always wanted to have on, because there is an intersection between meteorology and the weather and the $100 billion hurricanes that keep flowing through.
That could have been a 3-hour podcast.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
Did Wyatt tell you I called him?
Oh, so my son, Wyatt?
So for those of you listening, I had to end the Zoom because I changed something on my board and I lost my sound. So redneck ingenuity, unplug it and plug it back in. So I said, Scott, I'm going to turn the Zoom. So I turned it off. I turned it back on. James comes in and you're not there. So I tried to call you. You turned your phone on airplane mode, I'm guessing, like you do with every podcast. I couldn't get you. So I called your wife. I said, hey, I need, and we're past the time that we're supposed to start. I'm like, I need Cheryl's number. Cheryl, Scott's sister. I need Cheryl's number. She's like, okay. Is everything okay? I was like, yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm just looking at James Spann right now and Scott's not here. So I call, and I'm wearing stupid suspenders. So I call, I'm about to call. She's like, actually call Wyatt. So I was like, oh, what's Wyatt's number? So I called Wyatt. I was like, tell your dad to get in the Zoom. Bye. Click.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll let you close this out.
Well, guys, hey, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. You know, as I end every episode, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Go out in the big bad world, build relationships. You want to talk about a guy that builds relationships? James Spann, over the past 46 years, but 25 years going pretty much to an elementary school a day.
That's crazy.
Are you kidding me?
Can you imagine?
Might be why every person in the state of Alabama knows who he is.
The only thing I could think about was, can you imagine how good his immune system is being around so many kids every single day?
No doubt. But hey, go make money for your family, for your wife, for your kids' college fund, and your parents out there that are struggling. Go make money for them. Write good business for the agencies that you represent, and write good business for the companies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I'll be heading south Sunday. Right. I will see you next week, brother.
See you Monday. See you guys.
All right. Love you, brother. See you.